got some very big breaking news coming in. India and China have finally reached a consensus on disengagement of border personnel at Doklam face of sight. Well, that's breaking first. And this is coming in the recent weeks. India, China, we have seen the way they have maintained the diplomatic communication with respect to incident at Doklam. And now what we are breaking right now, first and exclusive on Republic TV, as both the countries, that is India and China, they have actually reached a consensus. Perhaps they have come on the same page in terms of disengaging border personnel at the face of sight, that is Doklam. Quickly joining on this breaking is our associate editor Aditya. Over to you. How big is this in the sense? Is it a paradigm shift in terms of both trying to agree on certain contentious issues?
Well, yes, Sakal, this is a big news coming. We are breaking this first on Republic TV that India and China have decided to expeditiously disengage at the border at the Doklam standoff site. In fact, this is a big development coming first on Republic TV. Top diplomats in the Ministry of External Affairs confirming to Republic TV first that this has been decided after active engagement, factional dialogue that was on between Beijing and New Delhi. In fact, I have a formal statement that has been issued by the Ministry of External Affairs. It says that in recent weeks, India and China have maintained diplomatic communication in respect of the incident at Doklam. During these communications, we were able to express our views and convey our concerns and interests. On the basis, expeditious disengagement of border personnel at the face of sight at Doklam has been agreed to and is ongoing. This has been issued in New Delhi by the Ministry of External Affairs. Now, this is big, Sakal, because for over 4 months now, there was an eyeball-to-eyeball contact face-off at the Doklam site. India, at the request of our neighbor, immediate neighbor, Bhutan, had in fact sent out the army personnel there, and there was an active engagement because China was trying to change the status quo and in fact trying to have a road construction there at the site of the status quo between Bhutan and China. Now, after active engagement of over 4 months at the diplomatic level, both in New Delhi and Beijing, finally India and China deciding to in fact expeditiously disengage border personnel at the face of sight. There were several hundred personnel, both from China and India, that were stationed there. Chinese media, in fact, state-run media, had been trying to, in fact, hit us at New Delhi and Indian media. But at this moment, it seems the diplomatic protocol, the diplomatic engagement has really worked. This is a big development breaking first on Republic TV. But India and China, finally, after almost like a Cold War kind of a situation down on ground, deciding to, in fact, withdraw their troops. This is a big consensus breaking first on Republic. We are trying to get more details, and if we can get somebody from the Ministry of External Affairs on the phone to speak about it.
Having said that, let's now slightly understand as far as Chinese perspective on this is considered. We know that in the last 4 months, as you've also explained, there's been a hardening of stance as far as China is considered. What do you think led to this sort of easing of tensions when it comes to China? Because they were trying their best to break the status quo.
Absolutely. That's the real interpretation. You know, China had been saying from day one, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere around June 16th when this entire episode began. And China had been saying that there's no status quo that China wants to change. It is Chinese territory, and that's why rightfully they were constructing a road there with all the heavy equipment and bulldozers and, of course, the protection of the Chinese PLA. And ever since then, there have been hardening of the stance from Beijing. There were a couple of occasions where diplomats from both countries met. In fact, I will get back to you.
All right, we will try and get back and connect with our associate editor. Remember, what we are breaking big is that India and China, despite of the last 4 months and the standoff that both the nations saw at the Doklam, had now reached a consensus on agreeing to disengage border personnel at the face of sight, which is Doklam. Now, it's important in the wake of recent developments in the last 4 months in particular, the way China has been deliberately trying to escalate tension, if not militarily, but otherwise also a deliberate attempt by the Chinese side to break the status quo. And now it seems that China has softened its stand, and India and China have now decided that a diplomatic communication will be maintained vis-a-vis incidents at Doklam, which actually means that expeditious disengagement. That's what we are breaking right now. Fast disengagement of border personnel will take place at the face-off site at Doklam. This is perhaps breaking first and breaking big on Republic TV. We'll try and put this in perspective. What are the implications? What really led to China softening the stand? And India has been trying to engage with China time and again to maintain peace and tranquility at the border. Well, we are expecting, as reported by Republic TV's associate editor, there's going to be a formal statement by the MEA. I believe they've already announced it on the Twitter. But we break the story first on Republic TV, and that is that India and China have agreed to reach a consensus. They have come on the same page in terms of disengaging their border personnel, their respective border apparatus or border personnel at the face-off site at Doklam. Now, as we've been saying, that this is important because both the nations have been trying in the last 4 months, in particularly China, taking an aggressive posturing, releasing those videos through social media, trying to harden their position as far as they expressing their stand that they're not going to budge from the Doklam side. But now it seems it's almost official. At the diplomatic level, the MEA press statement is expected in any moment from now. The disengagement understanding has been arrived between the two nations, that is India and China, which also in a big way means that easing of tensions which were pertaining to the border personnel at the Doklam site, particularly coming from the Chinese side, the attempts to escalate the tension, perhaps all that has been put to rest, because now India and China have maintained that there will be a proper diplomatic communication with respect to all these incidents that have taken place in the recent part at Doklam. And during these communications, both the sides are saying that we are able to express our views and we have conveyed our concerns and interests. Now, this is what these are the... Okay, now Snehesh, our deputy editor, joining us on this big story. Snehesh, what more do you read into it? Particularly China really softening stand, going a little... Snehesh, over to you. China stepping down and finally agreeing to disengage border personnel at Doklam. Snehesh.
Story on the Indo-China front, the fact that both countries have now agreed to disengage after the longest period of standoff between the two countries. You know, this standoff didn't take place at the line of actual control between India and China, but the standoff actually took place in Bhutan. And with both the sides now agreeing to disengage, actually bring down the tempo, is a clear victory for both sides. You know, and this is what Republic has been saying from the very beginning, that while the build-up is there, both the militaries are in a standoff. There were heavy parleys that was going on at the diplomatic and the political front. This also comes ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China for the BRICS summit. And what was expected, and this was expected, yes, that a breakthrough could happen around the time of the BRIC meeting. But now with the statement by the MEA, this clearly proves that the back-channel talks have actually been successful despite the high-tempo media psychological warfare that China had initiated.
And also its significance, if you could put that also in perspective ahead of the BRICS summit where Prime Minister is going to be there. And this, do you think this perhaps is well timed as far as both the sides engaging in this sort of easing out tensions at Doklam?
You know, absolutely, this is well timed, and this has been done keeping in mind the upcoming BRICS summit. You know, it would have looked very odd for the two countries, for the two leaders of the two countries to actually attend the BRICS meeting together when the standoff is going on in Doklam, you know, which is happening in a third country. So the expected, what was the expected was that a breakthrough was likely possible just before the BRICS summit, and this is exactly what has happened now. You know, both the from a military point of view, the issue had gone much larger, and it was the diplomacy that was at play. It was the political maneuvering that was being done, and eventually it has resulted in what MES said today is that both sides have now agreed for disengagement, which means that, as of now, you had about 350 Indian soldiers camped in face-to-face with the Chinese, backed by about a brigade of Indian soldiers. The security alert had been increased along the LAC, especially in the northeast and the Leh-Ladakh area. And you also saw the recent incursion by the Chinese troops in the Pangong Lake area.
Yes.
This was all leading to tensions between the two sides. The military, were on edge. Preparations were done, but at the same time, nobody was talking about a military solution. The focus of the entire of the two establishment has always been on the diplomatic front, and away from the media glare, there was heavy dose of diplomacy that was at work, and this has eventually resulted in the MES statement today.
A bit of a Chinese perspective, because, they seem to be perhaps getting more aggressive than anything else. The way they release those videos, the way some of the international journals quoted Chinese agencies, for example, Global Times said, and I quote, "The countdown to the rift between the two forces has started, and it seems to be an inevitable conclusion," quote unquote. So the war-like situation, that's the kind of projection, that's the kind of impression that the China at one point in time tried to send across. Part of the psychological ops, and now it seems there has been a considerable clampdown by the Chinese side, isn't it? And what could be the reason?
Absolutely, Sakal, and that is why Republic has been reporting very responsibly on this particular issue. And we've been saying right from the very beginning that China was completely taken aback by India's move. As I mentioned earlier, this particular standoff didn't happen at the LAC, but this happened in Bhutan, where China had gone ahead and tried to build road on a disputed territory between it and Bhutan. India stepped in, taking the Chinese by complete surprise, and hence they launched a media warfare. You saw the Chinese media upping the ante every single day. But as reported by Republic earlier, most of these statements were actually directed at its own citizens, just to show that the Chinese government was doing right, and Chinese government is being tough on India.
Yeah.
Sakal.
Right. Snehesh, yes, Snehesh, Deputy Editor. Snehesh, just be there with us on that story. Meanwhile, let me quickly go across to Republic TV's contributor, Saurabh Shukla. Saurabh, your assessment of this now, this is especially coming at a time when we are looking at the BRICS summit, and also for the fact that it is, you see, the way China has decided to really step down and go further on the same page with India in terms of disengaging border personnel. What reasons would you attribute this to? It's really big development, politically, diplomatically.
I think this is largely the result of the back channels that have been at work. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has been helming that, and we know from our sources that a lot of back channel meetings and efforts have gone into it, because the idea is that both countries realize that escalating it, staying this kind of a situation is not in their common interest. And then before the Prime Minister goes there, and certainly there is a meeting between Prime Minister and Xi Jinping planned, you have to realize that they have to find a solution to this logjam, because obviously both countries realize there are enough economic and strategic stakes that are involved. And that's the reason why you see this kind of a way out emerging, as you said in your story.
Right. And we're joined by Seshadri Chariji on this story. Sir, your initial comments, now it seems that the face-off like situation is history, but the kind of U-turn, if I may use the word, that China has apparently taken from disrupting the status quo, from trying to escalate the tensions at Doklam, and now finally agreeing to India that yes, let's kind of ease out the tensions at Doklam, border side. Mr. Seshadri Chariji, are you there with us? Mr. Seshadri Chari? All right. We'll try and reconnect with, I believe Saurabh continues to be with us on this story, as well as Snehesh. All right, let's try and once again do a quick recap as to what we are breaking right now. First, an exclusive on Republic. Disengagement is in progress as far as the Doklam standoff is considered. The big breaking comes at a time when India is looking at an all-important BRICS summit. And now, as per the MEA press statement, both sides have agreed to expedite the disengagement of the border personnel at the face of site, which happens to be Doklam. This has been agreed to and is going to be ongoing. And this is important, this is significant because it comes as a run-up to the recent developments. Top sources also telling Republic TV that troop withdrawal is ongoing right now at Doklam. So